2023 has come and gone, and while I think everyone thinks it is probably one of the best years for video games, that year is over now. It is now time for the brand new 2024. God, where does the time go? But the big question is, can we expect as big of a year from 2024 as we did with 2023, or maybe not so much? I mean, if you look back on it, the reason that 2023 was such a huge year, I think, is because a lot of stuff was kind of delayed from 2021 and 2022 until 2023. So on top of the games that were already planned to release during that time, we had a ton of crazy games. Plus, not to mention, in my personal opinion, while it was a great year for gaming, not the greatest for the gaming industry, especially with all the layoffs and everything. And regardless of what your thoughts on that, or if you don't personally care about that, which I think you personally should, they make the games. The developers that were laid off, all those hard-working employees and everything, they're the ones who make the games. Without them, we can't play those. So hopefully 2024 is a bit of a turnaround, but based on what I'm seeing so far, I'm not really sure, at least on some areas. Others, obviously, I think they'll do very, very well. Other areas, though, not so much. I mean, we have tons of great games releasing in the early months of 2024, right? We have Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Dragon's Dogma 2, Final Fantasy Rebirth, Black Myth Wukong, and so many more. But what about the first-party games? I mean, there's always this kind of like fine line between, you know, a third-party exclusive that goes onto a particular system, or there's the quote-unquote second-party developers and everything. But what about the first-party developers? Like, what are they making? What games are coming out onto our favorite platforms this year? I'm, of course, talking about Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo, because regardless of what your thoughts are on it or how much you wish it wasn't a factor, exclusives are what sell consoles. Otherwise, there would be no such thing as a console. Everyone would either have a PC or there would only be one console and everything would go on there, right? And this is just the way that the industry is. It's been this way for years and years and years. It's going to probably continue to be that way because, let's personally face it, why would you buy a Nintendo console if you could just simply play their games on this particular console called Console A, for example? Why would you buy an Xbox if you could just play it on, again, this particular console? Why would you even buy a Sony console if you could just, again, play it on Console C, right? That's the reason there are exclusives, right? And again, this has been something that's been going on since the original days of Sega versus Nintendo. And whew, man, it's been a while, but we're still here to that day. So my question is, what the heck is going on with the first-party studios? Now, I know, easily we could release this video and next week all of a sudden, or by the time you're watching this, you're already saying like, yeah, dumbass. We already have confirmation that they're doing this particular state of play or this Nintendo Direct or this Xbox exclusive preview or something like that, right? And fair enough. But again, we need to see those release dates. We need to just kind of see what's going to be happening, right? And again, this isn't to say that this means that we're going to have a terrible year for gaming with all three of them or anything like that. I just want to kind of bring up the question and kind of start the conversation. What can we expect from 2024? Because what I'm personally looking forward to as of right now, besides, you know, some of those like third-party exclusives or just those games that you can buy almost anywhere, but I'm also looking forward to some of the amazing indie games that we saw during the Game Awards and everything like that. But again, what sells a console and what makes you want to play on that particular platform? It's the exclusives. What do we have coming out exactly? I mean, just a quick look real quick before we get into the main topic of this particular video. Xbox has Hellblade 2, The Next Fable, and Avowed that are supposed to be releasing in 2024. However, one thing that all these games have in common, we don't know the release date yet. I don't want them to be delayed or anything, but again, just like anything, if they have to delay it, by all means go ahead. But I'm just really hoping that these kind of stay within the 2024 release realm. We don't need a repeat of 2022. If we look over at Nintendo's side of things, though, Nintendo's at a little bit of a different state right now. We have the first-party games of Donkey Kong vs. Mario, we have the new Princess Peach game, and we've actually got Paper Mario Thousand Year Door coming out this year. We don't know exactly when the Paper Mario game's coming out, but both Princess Peach and Mario vs. Donkey Kong, those are releasing in early 2024, which is pretty nice. Plus, if the rumors are to be believed, because they've been ramping up, especially right now, Nintendo is looking to kind of wind things down on the Switch, exclusively, I should say, and they're going to start preparing for their next console release, whenever that might be. It could be the end of 2024, or it could be early 2025. We'll see in a Nintendo Direct, no matter how much they try to deny it, by the way. And then finally, on the last hand, we have PlayStation, which we seem to be looking at The Last of Us Part 2 Remaster, which I personally don't count, because again, you can just go buy it on the PS4 if you want to. And Helldivers 2, which is their first kind of live service game. And last I checked, they are a first-party studio under them. They might technically be considered a second party, but regardless, that's pretty much it from them. I'm not counting the third-party exclusives because something like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, that's like just 3 months and then it's out on something else. And that's not made by Sony, right? It's not made by their first-party developers. They struck a deal with Square Enix like they usually do with a lot of stuff, and that's going to their console. That's great, but they're not making it, right? And again, it's the same thing with Nintendo and with Xbox, right? What are they preparing for this year upcoming, right? There's some stuff that I easily want from Nintendo and that I easily want from Xbox, but I'm not going to talk about this here. Today, we're going to talk about PlayStation. Me and the team have decided that we want to go over all three of the big three. So if you're seeing this video for the very first time and after you watch this, if you enjoy it, obviously leave us a like, leave a comment. What are your expectations for Sony? If you want to talk exclusively Nintendo or Xbox, however, though, check the top right corner there. Check out our Nintendo coverage and check out our Xbox coverage as well, as we kind of talk about what we would hope to see from these other two. And just overall, if you come from a different video, let us know down in the comments and be like, I think this team's going to do this, I think this team's going to do this, and just overall, what are your expectations? So with all that being said, though, let's go ahead and talk about PlayStation in 2024, and can they turn things around? Because 2023, kind of a rough year. Okay, so obviously PlayStation didn't have a terrible year or anything like that. You can finally find PlayStation 5s within normal stores these days. I can go into the local store here in Japan and find a PlayStation 5, no problem. The only thing I can't find is the PlayStation Portal. And people thought that was going to sell terribly, but not. Now, one of the big, easy ones we can get out of the way for 2024 is, of course, the PlayStation 5 Pro. Tons of rumors, tons of speculations about this thing finally coming out. I mean, it makes sense. The PlayStation 5, believe it or not, has been out for over 3 years, and it's kind of time for that mid-gen refresh. Like it or not, that's just the way things have been since, well, basically the PlayStation 3 days, right? So it is time around now to kind of see that, or we could see that potentially at the beginning of 2025. But regardless of PlayStation 5 Pro, obviously it's gonna be more powerful, but it's not gonna be too much more powerful because you still have to be able to play all the games that come out on the original PlayStation 5, which is still a pretty good console regardless. I mean, it's the same level as the X and everything like that. But I don't expect it to knock it out of the park and just be like, oh, it's like twice the power of everything that the original PlayStation 5 can do. Not to mention the fact that I think a lot of people are saying that this doesn't feel like kind of the next gen, when in reality, it hasn't on either the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X. Because I think back on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, we kind of hit how good things can look. Nowadays, it's more about how big you can make things. You know, you can still make things obviously look good on this current generation, and going forward, we easily can. But I think that jump that we saw from something like the PlayStation 2 to the PlayStation 3, we're not going to be seeing that from the 4 to the 5, obviously, or the 5 to, well, the 5 Pro at this point, but then to the 6 eventually, right? We're just not going to see that, I think, in that way. So it's going to be things like seeing more ray tracing and not killing our frames per second, right? Maybe finally getting 60 FPS consistently. Games, please. It's needed. But yeah, PlayStation 5 Pro probably coming out. Kind of expected to. If it doesn't, I'm not surprised, but we've seen some rumors and I wouldn't be surprised if it does happen. So overall, console sales doing pretty well. We had some good first-party releases. We had the obvious ones like Spider-Man 2. We had some other third-party exclusive games that came out during the year, and we kind of had some re-releases and remakes and all that kind of stuff. So overall, Sony, looking at the games particularly, did pretty well. However, they were in the spotlight, and not in a good way, quite a bit this past year. We had everything from the whole trial with Microsoft and Activision. We had all the layoffs that we saw across the board. That's not just Sony, that's Xbox, that's literally everybody, I think, except for Nintendo, actually. Nintendo gets a huge pass on that because they're actually kind of smart with their money and everything like that. We also had the huge thing when it came to Bungie and everything like that, but then it turns out that it actually isn't Bungie, but then there's a clause that Sony can potentially take over Bungie. And we've had some thoughts on that. Check that in the top right corner or down in the description below if you want to as well. I made a whole video on all that stuff. But Sony just hasn't been looking that good. And then on top of that, their CEO is leaving. He's actually leaving in March of this year. I mean, he's basically done with the job, right? And whatever your thoughts on him might be, he's not, you know, your kind of Phil Spencer's or your Reggie's from Nintendo or anything like that back in the day. But, you know, he did pretty well with Sony in terms of the financial and business side of things. On the customer side, not so much. He's really pushed all that live service stuff and everything. And then we've seen that over half of them have been put on ice. We saw that Naughty Dog and their multiplayer live service game has been officially canceled completely, which I personally think is a good thing, but a lot of people were still excited to see that. So it's just like, damn, Sony, what's going on, especially near the tail end of 2023. And now we're to 2024. And if you want to look again at some of those games, you got things like Ronin, you got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But for something like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the exclusivity of that is only until May, according to the fine print. We don't know if that means it's going to PC, or maybe Xbox is finally getting both Remake and Rebirth at the same time. I'm not really sure. I know there's been some talk about how Sony has acquired the entire Final Fantasy VII Remake, like trilogy, essentially, completely to Sony itself. And then obviously with them starting to put their games on PC now, that's also starting to kind of weave into that plan and everything with whatever they're talking with Square Enix and all that kind of stuff. I'm not really sure what the case is, right? And things can obviously change and everything like that. Deals say one thing and the next thing you know, 10 years have passed by. And it's like, oh no, by the way, we can do this now. I'm not really sure what they're going to do, but it's kind of just asking the point of what are all the first party studios doing right now? I mean, on top of all of the layoffs that we had throughout the industry itself, right, back in 2023, we also had things like Japan Studios closing down a couple of years ago, which I know it didn't happen in 2023, but Japan Studios is really loved by a lot of people. Not only did they have their small little games that they made as well, but it's thanks to those team members that would go through Sony's first party games and be able to utilize the engine within certain games or with the software or the hardware of the PlayStation products, and then just go through and check things and kind of just tweak it and make sure everything worked. And love or hate Sony, you can't deny that their first party games of the last few years, they've been really solid. They haven't had any big technical issues or anything, or like the game's unplayable or anything like that. So all of a sudden to kind of see that go away, it's just like, damn, that really sucks. So again, I don't know what happened to every single member from that team. Hopefully they got picked up and put onto different teams so that can kind of continue. But again, it makes Sony just, again, look like your typical business, which basically, aside from Nintendo, everyone looks like that, especially in this industry. So what's going on with the first party studios? Well, let's start with Naughty Dog, for example. So like we mentioned before with Naughty Dog, they have officially canceled their Last of Us Factions multiplayer game, which was supposed to be a live service game. And the main reason that they said that they stopped is because if they released this game, they were going to have to take the entire studio, right, all of those members of Naughty Dog, and turn it into solely focusing on the live service aspect, which, if you know anything about live service games, they are easier said than done. That's why 95% of them fail. The others, thankfully, don't, especially if you like those games. But I'm not going to lie, I don't care about any kind of live service game from Sony just because I'm not really into the whole live service games. Because think about it, just think about it for a second on the live service aspect, right? It is meant to be played again and again and again for months and months and years over time, right? We as gamers have a finite amount of time. Not all of us can do gaming 24/7 or anything like that. Like even streamers and content creators and anything, we can't do that, right? We have a full-time job like I do myself personally from 8:30 in the morning until 4 p.m. And then I have to come home, make dinner, try to make content, all that kind of stuff, right? People are in school, people are doing other things, and it's like we have a finite amount of time. So if you play a live service game, you can only play maybe 1 or 2 at most. Trying to play 4, 5, 12? Yeah, Sony, 12 of them? Oh, that's not gonna work. That's impossible. So I know the reason why people go into the live service ones in terms of the businesses and everything. It's a lot of money. It doesn't work in reality. So with Naughty Dog finally canceling that and saying they're going back to their first party games, awesome, great. But what have we seen from Naughty Dog over the last few years? We got the remaster of The Last of Us Part 1, and then we got The Last of Us Part 2 remaster coming out, which I know is going to obviously up the graphics and everything. They're adding in some road-like mode for Last of Us Part 2 and all that kind of stuff. And I know that The Last of Us is like super popular. It's obviously with the TV show and everything that they've released. It's garnered a ton of sales and everything. I myself am a little tired of seeing The Last of Us. Now, I know Bobby on the team is just going to be like, man, Last of Us is awesome. You're just jealous. You know, again, everyone's allowed to like whatever games they want to like. That's totally fine. I would just like to see something new because, again, what do I know Naughty Dog for personally before The Last of Us? It was the Uncharted series. I'm not going to lie. Uncharted, in my personal opinion, is way better than The Last of Us. Again, personal preference. Everyone's going to like whatever game they like. Totally fine. Not saying you have to like what I like, and I don't have to like what you like. That's perfectly fine. But it would just simply be nice to see something maybe potentially new from Naughty Dog or something like that. I know obviously The Last of Us Part 3 will eventually come out. I'm assuming it will. But it would be nice to see something new. I'm not even talking about like an Uncharted, 5 or anything like that. I think Nathan's story is completely done, which is totally fine. But it should be nice to see something new from the studio, right? Take advantage of the PlayStation 5 and make something completely new and everything, whatever that's going to be. In a brand new world or any kind of new game, that's totally fine. And it could be a big AAA blockbuster if it wants to, or heck, if you want to, make a small game or something like that. Do some kind of experiment game, right? Kind of do like the Hi-Fi Rush style thing, where you release this smaller game and it does super well, and then you get to build on that and make something completely huge if you want to. You obviously have the reputation and the talent there. Now you just got to use it. If we move away from Naughty Dog, however, though, because I feel like, especially over the last couple months, it's been covered a lot, let's go over to one of the other teams, which is Guerrilla Games. Now, if you don't know much about Guerrilla Games, then you should know that they are the creators of a franchise called Killzone. Killzone 1 through 3 were back on the PlayStation 2/PlayStation 3, and then Killzone Shadow Zone, I believe, was the final game, or just Killzone 4, as most people call it. That was on the PlayStation 4. In fact, it was a release game. I personally loved Killzone 2 and Killzone 3, and the multiplayer was extremely fun in those games. Not saying it was the best or anything. I'm sure if I went back now, I'd be like, okay, yeah, there's a little bit of, nostalgia glasses there and everything. But it was a fun multiplayer game. You had some of those, kill streaks that all those games kind of did back in the days and everything like that. But learning how to tap fire on certain weapons, because there was a lot of kick to some of those weapons in those games. It was just a lot of fun. Not to mention the way that the worlds looked and everything like that. It was crazy. Not to mention brutal in the best way possible. Killzone, again, 4, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. It was kind of whatever. It kind of made everything all very colorful, which for a game, the way it looked really nice. But in terms of like the gameplay and just the world and everything, I wasn't the biggest fan of it personally. Then after that, they moved on to the Horizon series, which was Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West. And I know a lot of people don't particularly like those games because they are kind of huge open worlds with too much free space in between, and you're using a bow to fight enemies and everything like that. I personally love the series, though. It's really good. And unfortunately, the biggest thing I think that's held it back is just its release date, unfortunately. They've released it at the worst time. Both games have been released right around the time where a other big competition game just drowns it out and nobody knows about it or forgets about it. And it's not until it releases on PC, which I guess is a good thing in the end, then people start to really buy it and play it and all that kind of stuff. So the question is now, what is Guerrilla Games doing? Well, we haven't seen anything since Forbidden West, which again was only a couple years ago. So I'm not saying they need to release something in 2024, but maybe just a small teaser or something like that, maybe near the end side of it, which is totally fine. There's rumors about this like MMO again with the whole live service thing, but I wouldn't be surprised that that's been put on ice because I don't know how good a live service Horizon game is going to be. Again, the games look absolutely beautiful. Can't deny it. They were some of the most beautiful games in gaming today right now. I just don't know how you can make a live service game of that. And again, my whole thing that I talked about with the live service stuff, we have a finite amount of time as players. So what's going to happen? What's Guerrilla Games working on? Is this MMO finally going to be announced after all the rumors and leaks and everything that we've seen over the last couple of years? I'm not really sure. It'd just be nice to see something. I don't know whether it's going back to Killzone or even if like the main team is working on this MMO, have a small section of the team or some other team within Sony, I don't know, remake Killzone 1. Killzone 1 came out years ago. It's not gonna be some remaster of a 4-year-old game. It would be like update the graphics, update the gunplay, everything. That'd be pretty cool. I'd be down for a Killzone remake. I think it'd be pretty cool, and I think it would cost them too much. But again, what am I to know? I don't know that huge corporate business stuff, so I don't know. It'd just be really cool to see something like that when it comes to Killzone, because I personally loved 2 and 3. I didn't get the chance to really play 1. I went back and played it a little bit, but I could definitely feel like Killzone 2 and 3 were the better games, in my opinion, compared to 1. But I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting to see. Moving on to the next studio under Sony, kind of the big main ones that we know about, is Sucker Punch. Now, Sucker Punch, I love the Sucker Punch teams. I mean, I like all these teams regardless. They have amazing talent. They can make some amazing games. I mean, think about it. They are taking just code and somehow turn it into a thing where I hold a controller and I can play it. That is unbelievable, regardless of what level you make a game. Indie, AA, AAA, or even Quad A, I guess, because those are technically becoming a thing nowadays. But Sucker Punch, I've always loved their games. From the Sly Cooper series to the Infamous games, and now with Ghost of Tsushima, man, all their games have been absolutely amazing. It was a little bit of a punch to the gut, however, though, when I found out that they made an official statement saying we don't have any plans for Infamous or Sly or anything like that. And I'm just like, really? Nothing at all? Even if your main team is focused on Ghost of Tsushima 2 is what we're assuming, right? Which I'm all for. Go play Ghost of Tsushima 1. It's an amazing game, absolutely worth it. Heck, it's on sale most of the time now. You can get it for like under 30 bucks. It's 100% worth it. But God, can we get Infamous 1 and 2 like remaster or remake or something just from a small side team, because you can't play those games now because they're on the PS3, and the only way you can do that is by doing the whole cloud gaming thing, and I'm not playing for PlayStation Plus. Hell no, not gonna pay for it. Sly Cooper's kind of the same thing, right? You can only play them on the previous. They did like that bundle with the first 3 games. That was back on the PS3, and then I believe the PS3 also had Sly Cooper 4, the time game where you would travel through time and everything like that. How do we not have that on, you know, the PS4/PS5 right now? Like, oh God, I just love to see it. Maybe if they do make it for PC, like they eventually bring those out, which I know it's always hit or miss depending on what certain PC games come out with PlayStation. But throughout some leaks, especially when it came to the trial with Activision and Microsoft and everything, we saw that they are trying to do more PC things. So here's hoping that we do see Infamous 1 and 2 and the Sly Cooper games on PC, and you know, also bring it on to PlayStation 5 and everything like that. I'd be totally for it. At a good price though. I'm talking 70 bucks for a remaster of just one game, right? You put Infamous 1 and 2 on the same disc or something like that, and then you want me to pay 70 bucks? 100% I'll do that. But again, this isn't The Last of Us Part 1 or anything. Just fine. I was thinking about covering something like Bungie, but then I'm just like, it's Bungie. They've been hitting way down, so I'm not even gonna talk about that. Again, top right corner, we covered that stuff already. Bungie isn't technically a first party under Sony, but if things keep going the way we think they are, especially with that IGN article and everything, yeah, no, they're gonna be right under Sony. So and then the last one I'll talk about in terms of these big ones, I know there's other developers and teams underneath Sony, but again, this video would then turn into like an hour long. Now, Santa Monica, I was originally going to see something along the lines of like, man, what has Santa Monica been up to since Ragnarok? I know Ragnarok came out in the tail end of 2022, and so it's kind of like, okay, what are we expecting and everything? But we just got that awesome DLC, God of War Ragnarok Valhalla, which is free. Go play it. It's awesome. And then now there's some rumors about the first 3 God of War games being remade or something like that, so I'm not really sure. But I don't know, it'd be kind of interesting to see what could they do maybe with a smaller team that could make maybe a smaller game. I mean, the fact that they made that Valhalla DLC in 9 months, and again, it's free. Santa Monica's awesome. Again, all these guys are, but Santa Monica is definitely one of my top favorites, I'd say. But yeah, it's just, I am wondering. I'm not saying that this year is going to absolutely kill Sony. They're going to die out and be bought up and yada yada. I'm not saying any of that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that their third-party exclusives or the AA exclusive or anything like that don't matter when it comes to the system, because I can tell you right now, everyone, at least most people, is super hyped for Rebirth. Over here in Japan, I'm already seeing tons of advertisement for it on trains, on walls, in the station, on billboards, buildings, you name it. They are super hyped for it here, and I can see it across the internet as well. Rebirth is going to be one heck of a game, regardless of what people will say on Twitter, because 9 times out of 10, when someone says on Twitter, they're not really actually meaning it half the time. Sometimes they do, but regardless. But it's like, what are the first-party stuff doing, right? Because again, especially if you look at a lot of these, you know, AAA exclusives or the third-party exclusives and everything, 9 times out of 10, they don't stay exclusive only on that platform for so long. Again, some of them do, but not all of them. What's going to happen with Ronin, right? To my knowledge, I believe Ronin is exclusive for about a year. It could be longer than that. But after that, it could go to PC or it could go to something else, which I really wish Sony would do PC a little bit sooner on some of their games. I understand why they do it on PlayStation 5 first, and then they make it available on PC, but it'd be nice to, instead of having to wait 2 years for something, go for about a year, then do it. I don't know, this is my personal. I'm hoping that we see something soon in the next couple of months, whether it's, again, just a simple title or, you know, I know there's a lot of discourse when it comes to how far in advance you announce something compared to when something is going to release. And while I, just like many other people, have been like, God, you announced this so long ago and still got like 5 more years to go. Elder Scrolls 6. It's used to bring talent in sometimes, right? When people announce something, they're also it's kind of like showing a project to people who are looking for work, and people are going to apply and try to get onto the teams to help them make that game. So I get it, right? But like I kind of stated with some of the other developers and everything on this list talking about PlayStation, they don't even need to make a big AAA game. Go make a small game, why not? You know, go make the equivalent of something like Hi-Fi Rush, where it doesn't look as big compared to these other gigantic games that you're mostly known for, but show us, you know, some of the side stuff. Just, I know there's some creative juices in some of these developers who are like, I like doing this, but man, would I love to make something like this, especially being backed by PlayStation or Nintendo or Xbox, right? In this case, we're obviously talking about PlayStation, but I would love to see something like that. So hopefully we can see something soon when it comes to these first-party studios and slash developers, and just what's going to come from 2024, or heck, you know what, even leading into 2025, which, because I get it. Takes time to make these games and everything like that, but for the most part, I think things are almost back to normal. My biggest concern is the fact that they've laid so many people off, and they're closing down those smaller studios and everything, and it's like, can this work out the way it used to? I don't know, especially with some of those budgets. Now I want to know from you, what do you think is going to be released with PlayStation in 2024? Do you think it's going to be announced? Do you think we're going to see some kind of direct soon coming up in February? I know over the last couple of years around the early 2024 time, we have seen some of that stuff sometimes, or in the late February, March sometimes. What are your personal thoughts though? Because for once, I think February isn't looking too crazy this year. And if you know February for the last like 4 or 5 years, February has always been crazy. What's going to happen? I'd like to know. But I want to know your personal thoughts. What kind of games do you want to see from each of these teams or other teams I didn't mention in this video? Because again, it was long. Or just, what are your expectations, right? Keep them realistic. You know, let's just have conversations in the chat. And again, if you want to talk Nintendo and Xbox explicitly, then check out the videos in the top right corner down below in the description. Because again, we're having all 3 big talks when it comes to these big consoles and everything. So anyway, I've been Talon with Direct Gaming though. Thank you so much for stopping by the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you want to support the channel even more, a sub and a like on the video would be awesome. Shows us you like this type of content and we try to make more. Or if you want to, check out more of our guides and everything. We try to make guides and tips and tricks and everything when it comes to the most recent games and even older games sometimes. And we also have discussions on just games in the past and everything, and just our personal opinions. We want to know your personal opinions as well. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video though. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you all have an awesome day in the next week and weekend and into the future. And here's to a great 2024. Next time, everyone, Johnny.